decriminalizing small amounts of marijuana possession, and it's had a horrible effect on the lives of thousands of people in our community who end up with a permanent criminal record because they just are picked up with very small amounts of marijuana possession. These aren't drug dealers, these aren't people running around the country, they're small individuals who have their lives ruined because of unduly punitive policy. And so I support the effort to legalize medical marijuana. I think we need to be more progressive. We need to look at retroactively trying to clean up some of the records of people who've already been harmed because they shouldn't have been prosecuted in the first place. And I think that it's a step in the right direction, and I would support it.
Okay, next. Asher, thank you for this question. And it is an important question. For me, this question gets a little personal, actually. I had my uncle, who was very close to me, died of multiple myeloma. He was a veteran and exposed to Agent Orange during his tours in Vietnam. And for him, I saw that ravage his body. I saw what it did to him, and I saw the impact it had. And really, when we start talking about some of these issues, we need to really think about the impacts on people's lives. At the same time, I do want to address the question of the referendum, Asher, because it's an important question. I think we do need to do more research. I think we need to open the door to more research for medical purposes. But what I don't want to see is a back door to full legalization for recreational purposes. I don't think that works. I don't think that's really addressing the issue that we're talking about here, which is issues for medical marijuana use or medicinal use purposes. Because frankly, for my uncle and any insane adult who's got a terminal illness, I could care less. If it makes your life a little easier and a little better, I'm okay. So I thank you for the question, and please feel free to ask me any additional follow-ups if you have them. Okay, thank you.
John Diggs.
Thank you. My wife of 38 years, she's a middle school teacher. She teaches a course on drug prevention and education. And we have many discussions about marijuana and other things. I have a son over here. I have two sons. He could tell you and vouch for the fact that I had pounded into his head since he was a child, don't use drugs as she did. But I'm also here to tell you, like Tim said, sometimes it hits home personally. And I will tell you, one of my very best friends in life and his father who reached a terminal illness, and there was nothing whatsoever that could provide any relief. And he finally said, you know what, John? He said, I've never smoked marijuana in my entire life, but I'm going to get some. And he went and got some. He put it in brownies. He surprised his dad, who had no idea what it was. And he said it was the first day of relief he'd ever had in his entire life. We're talking medical marijuana. This is something, yes, I do support. Thank you.
Thank you. Pat?
I'm also a lawyer and have acted as a prosecutor for a period of time. I am totally in favor of the medical marijuana initiative. Also am in favor of what the City Council in Tampa did to decriminalize and to give citations to people with small amounts of marijuana. I think it's something that has to go, be brought into the county. I've been on the board of Tampa Crossroads for a number of years and also worked at Legal Services. And I know the kind of destruction and havoc it's wreaked on families and lives, and what it's done to young people and people that have this charge against them, and they spend their whole lives really, having troubles with employment, with housing, with everything else because of a charge with a minor amount of medical marijuana, or of marijuana, that's actually already legal in several states. So I totally support that. I know that it's important to you and to many people that I know.
Thank you, Pat. Reverend Scott?
Well, I'm not a lawyer or attorney. I'm a preacher. I'm a pastor. And I support it. Let me tell you why I support it. My brother died at the age of 32 years old. He died from AIDS. I saw him suffer. The last days of his life was very critical. He said to me, will you drive me around for my last time? I put him in my car and I drove him around Tampa to see the sunshine, see the city, see the beauty of what God had created. I saw him suffer his last few minutes of his life. took him to St. Joseph. Doctor pulled me to the side, said, I'm not supposed to tell you this, but you need to take him off life support. His quality of life would never be any better. I support medical and the passage of it because I think it will help those who are terminally ill and who need some relief. We talk about addiction of marijuana and all that. Do you not know prescription drug? More people are addicted to prescription drug. Michael Jackson, Prince. Do I need to call any other names?
Thank you, Reverend. Thank you very much. Ask your good question. Joseph, you're next.
Getting close to me. Joseph Citro. I want to start from the bottom up. There are plenty of special interest groups and societies and boards that the Hillsborough County Commission writes checks to. And when you start adding up the $15,000, $20,000 over 100, 200, 300 types of these special interest groups, and there's no reports given back before they get the next check. What is your special interest group? Are you going to demand some sort of fiscal report for the monies before the next check is written?
Thank you, Joe. Mr. Willis, you want to start down there, and then we'll go down? Thanks. All right.
Joe, I mean, I think the question, I'm going to push back on the premise of that question a little bit. Because you're phrasing it as special interest groups, as if the Salvation Army or some of these groups that are providing social services are merely special interest groups. There's important work that's getting done because the county's writing a $10,000 or $15,000 check to a group. And Joe, it may not be important to you, but it's going to be important to somebody in this room or somebody in the county. And so,
There's no reports given back. There's no fiscal responsibility for money for given to these groups.
Hold on, Joe. Let me answer the question.
I don't, look, I've sat on the advisory board. I was appointed by Commissioner Beckner to the Citizens Advisory Board for the entire county. And we've looked at this issue. We've looked at funding for nonprofits. And what we've encouraged, how I think this issue needs to be addressed, is we need to be looking at streamlining the issue. We do need audits. We do need reports coming back. Absolutely. But we need to be making sure that we're getting the most efficient use of the government dollars. But we can't go to war with these groups. And it's very easy for people to say, cut that group, cut this group, cut another group. There's somebody out there that's benefiting from that check, and they need it, and they're going to be hurt if we cut off that money. So I'm going to be very hesitant before I just go cutting people off because.
Thank you, Brian.
All right.
Tim?
Thank you. Great question, Joe. So one of the things you asked was, what's your special interest group? Or what's your group? So one of the groups I work with is Metropolitan Ministries. They, in my opinion, do a great job of helping a very important issue in our county, which is homelessness. And it's one that typically the face of it are the guys in reflective vests standing out on a corner on Kennedy. That's not really what the problem is. The problem is the family that's homeless, living in their car, kids washing up in the bathroom at McDonald's before they go to school in the morning. That's the problem. But coming back to the next question is, how do we help solve that? And what accountability and transparency are we requiring? For those legitimate groups like that, having an end-of-year report is typical for any nonprofit. So I'm opposed to adding a whole new layer of red tape, but some of these basic end-of-year report is something that most of these should be able to provide at the end of the year anyway. They do so to their donors, right, to anyone that's making contributions, because otherwise they won't be able to keep their nonprofit status, and frankly, they won't be able to raise a lot in contributions anyway. So I think accessibility and transparency and demanding that back is not a big request. Thank you.
John?
Thanks. Review, accountability, transparency, extremely important. That being aside, some of the interest groups we're talking about, really not special interest, but so much so as they are nonprofit, and they're out to serve the community like all of us want to be involved with. Quick example I can give you that has been very effective. In Plant City, one of the things that we did, because we recognized we had a lot of things we wanted to accomplish, realized we couldn't do it all ourselves, we recognized through the power of synergy, where you get the sum of the parts is greater than the whole, or the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. We reached out to organizations, for example, like the YMCA. The YMCA could not come to Plant City on their own, and at the same time, we needed a pool and we needed recreational facilities, which we could not supply on our own. We worked together, created a great synergistic situation.
that one works.
Thank you, John. Pat?
I think you're absolutely right. I think we do need accountability whenever the county gives money to organizations, whether they're nonprofit. I'm not sure which organizations you're speaking about, but I think there does have to be accountability, not too onerous accountability that causes them to spend more on making themselves accountable than they use to fund the programs. But we've seen within the county and outside of the county some abuses of that, like I think right offhand, the $660,000 that went to housing that that was shut down a few years ago. Recently we lost an $800,000 federal grant. Now that's from a not-for-profit that was working to house our homeless, so that right now we have no transitional housing. We now don't have housing available for services that the Salvation Army, that the Spring was offering, and that the Alpha House was offering. And we have people that are having to go out in the street instead. So I think, yes, we have to really look at that and make sure that we are spending every single county dollar well.
Thank you, Pat. Mr. Scott?
Well, unless the county has changed when I was there was an audit that was required for everybody that received money, that they had to submit their audit to the Board of County, to staff, to the Board of County Commission. Unless that's changed, that's been in place since I was there in 1996, and then we were strengthening it even further because there were some incidents that happened. But that's been in place. We talk about special interests. It all depends on what you mean by special interest, because we give money to the chamber. Are you aware of that? You give money to the Committee 100, which name has changed now. You give money to a lot of the CDCs of Tampa, Metropolitan Ministry, a whole lot of groups that get a lot of dollars from Hillsborough. In fact, there was several pockets of where you can get, that was what you call it non-competitive, where you got money, and then that was the competitive, where you got money. But no matter what, they always require, and Edith, I think you can attest to this, Edith Stewart, that they were required to submit an audit and their financials to the Board of County Commission. The zoo got in trouble. They were getting money. Moses get money. So I just want to point that out to us. So there is something in place. We might need to strengthen it, but it is something already in place.
Thank you, Reverend Scott.
Hi, I'm Ben Ritter, former United States Marine, member of the Paralyzed Veterans of America, and co-chairman of the Tampa Mayor's Alliance for People with Disabilities. I use a wheelchair. This is a transportation question. As you know, transportation network companies, Uber and Lyft, do not provide accessible transportation like taxi industry does. You have to be able to get up out of your wheelchair and walk over and sit into a transportation network company. What can we do to fix this problem in Tampa Bay and Hillsborough County?
Okay, start back. Well, I guess go ahead, Reverend Scott, go ahead. You can take it and work it back now.
Yeah, we got to really work on, let me just say, first of all, I spent a day when I was on the County Commission in 2005 riding around in a wheelchair to understand what people have disability go through. Rode the bus, I understood the disabilities of how to get on the bus. First of all, the bus, the lifts were not working. Or you go into the grocery stores, you cannot reach up and get items off the top. So yes, that's a lot that we need to do in order to help those who have disability and be able to ensure that the mass transit is available, that's accessible for them, as well as also I chair the Disadvantaged Board on Heartline as well to address the whole issue of disability and the struggles that we have sometimes in not making sure that people who have special needs or disability be able to have access to everyday convenience of life just like everybody else. And so that is deserved. I will tell you, you return me back to the Board of County Commission, I will again spend a day understanding the issue again and working hard to make sure that that this is corrected.
Thank you, Reverend Scott. Pat?
We do have to do better by our disabilities and transportation systems. I'm extremely disappointed in where we have been with our transportation in general and specifically addressing your issue. I think it's time for us to move to a 21st century transportation system, and we have not been doing that, and we have not had the conversation that we needed to get that done. We need to move forward. We need to address your issue. We need to address the issue for young people like my children. I have a 22 and a 25-year-old. My daughter moved to New York. My son moved to Portland, Oregon. They're not coming back, they told me, because they can't get around here and they don't want to live in a place where they have to own cars. We have to do broad sweep here, and the problem is that we need to have a commission that's committed to doing it, and we don't have that right now. If we had a commission that was committed to doing it, we'd be passing a gas tax tomorrow. We would be bringing the resources to bear to do what we need to do, and I want to see that done.
Thank you, Pat. John, again?
I'm sorry that your kids are not living here. I hope that we can turn that around and invite them to come back. I'm so thrilled that my oldest son is living here, and he encouraged his wife to join him. She's from Jacksonville. She loves Tampa Bay. I have another son who's in the Marine Corps, such as you yourself. Thank you. And I'm hoping that he too will be coming back. He left yesterday morning to join Special Operations, so thank you. Your issue, your cause is most important to me. Back in the early 1990s, I was on the Board of Trustees for Hillsborough Community College. That's when the ADA rules came into effect. We moved promptly, quickly to make certain that all of our institutions were in compliance. We need to do the exact same thing, and of course to make certain that people can travel and move all over the county, and not just the county. But when we talk about a transit and transportation plan, we need to make certain that we make it a regional plan. Because the worst thing that can happen is if we come up with some system that doesn't jive with the system across the bay. We've got to work together. We all are proud to lead in Hillsborough County, but we're all part of the Tampa Bay region.
Thank you, John. Tim?
Thank you. Thank you, and thank you for your service. I sincerely, from a military family, from the bottom of my heart, thank you. I hope somebody does ask a question on transportation in general. That's my background, and frankly, I'm pleased to have at it. But your question was not about transportation specifically. Your question was about ride-sharing services such as Uber and Lyft. I understand. So Uber and Lyft, one at the state level, needs to be done too. But let's talk about what we can do here locally. I've actually worked with both Uber and Lyft professionally in my work. And I know one of the things that would be easy enough to require is that some percentage of their fleet have those options available, that there is a accessible component to their fleet, and that's part of the contingency to operate here. That I don't have a problem with. Uber and Lyft are part of the future of transportation. Make no mistake about it. And it's not really about competing with taxi services. It's about what transportation looks like, delivering last mile, that last mile. That HART actually doesn't do so well. But as far as that goes, I think that's an easy enough thing to do, to require that level of accessibility within their overall fleet. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Mr. Willis?
Well, I had the opportunity to go to law school in Washington, D.C., and so I lived for 3 years in a place that had real transit options. Transit options doesn't mean just rail or just better bus service. It's the whole spectrum. It means that you can walk out of your house and have a safe route. It means you can roll and have a safe route. It means that you can get to the doctor, to work, whatever your ability in life, whatever your condition, your income, that you have choices about where you live, about how you're going to move about the region. And that should apply to everybody, whatever their situation. That's what I'm committed to working for, and that's what I've been working towards since I've been back here, is fighting for a regional system of transit options. So no matter where you live, you have a choice about how you move around. Now, there's no question that we do not spend an adequate amount of money on transportation options. But I will disagree, Tim, with your proposal, because that's trying to regulate the companies like Uber and Lyft the same way we're regulating cabs. And that's the problem. That's the problem we keep having. That's what they did in Austin, and it resulted in Uber and Lyft getting shut down. We need to make sure we have a spectrum of transportation options instead of trying to make Uber and Lyft apply by the old rules.
Thank you. Greg?
I'm Gregory Wilson. First of all, thank you all for offering yourself up for public service, and especially the 5 of you anyway. Thank you for being here in Tiger Bay. Thus far, it's been easy.